So, hello and welcome to VR Verdict Podcast, episode 133, our weekly podcast about everything VR. I am PJ, and joining me is.
Marcus Maximus Mera,
That is
Cygnus
a heck of a
Entertainment.
name.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
So, welcome. Thanks for coming and chatting. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, but mainly Colossal Cave coming out to
Woo!
many
Colossal
platforms.
Cave.
Yeah. For those of you not familiar with, it's a reimagining of an old title from Sierra. I'm just kind of curious. Let's start maybe with the
No,
history.
you're wrong, PJ.
Am I?
You're wrong.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
you don't got it right.
Oh,
So it's basically a 50-year-old text adventure created by Don Woods and Will Crowther. It was built to run on a PDP-10, which is those big mainframes. So you needed one of those teletypes, like those typewriters, and there was no monitor or anything like that. You would type in the input, and the teletype would print it out the responses and stuff.
oh,
So
wow.
the game was an original text adventure. It was before Zork, before all that Infocom. It was the game that inspired Roberta Williams to create games. So what happened was Ken was doing some work. I believe it was like financial company or medical company of some sort, and he brought home the teletype and connected it to a telephone because it had like a big, those big cups, like the old school telephones, and you'd stick
Yep.
it in, look like suction cups, and you stick it on there, and it was an old school modem, and he would dial into the PDP-10, and there was a game on the mainframe called Adventure, which is Colossal Cave. And I showed it to Roberta, and she started playing it, and she was like, wow, this is fun. And she got really hooked on it. And then I believe shortly after that, like maybe like a week or two, they bought an Apple II and bought the game on disc. And Roberta played it, continuously until she beat it, like in a short time afterwards. And she really loved it and was wanting more, but there was nothing that existed. There was no other games around. So she took Ken out to dinner one day with an idea for a murder mystery game called Mystery House. So here she is in a restaurant explaining about a murder and knives and blood and this, and we're gonna do this game. And the people sitting around them are like, "Who the hell are these people?" And like, that's some weirdos. But in the end, she convinced him to, stop working on his Fortran compiler, which was what he wanted to make, and to make her a game. And that game was Mystery House, and it basically was a huge success right off the bat. They were selling tons of copies, and before you know it, they moved out to Oakhurst, where I am right now, actually visiting the old Sierra offices. And originally it was called Online Systems. That was the original name of the company. That was Ken's company, but they didn't have the trademark for it. So then they went and took inspiration from Yosemite and the Half Dome and called the company Sierra Online, which is a very, very world famous company that they eventually sold. So, it's said that I'm the guy that helped pull him out of retirement. And I guess that's true. I mean, it probably would have happened anyway, but I was the first artist to talk to Ken, and and here we are now. Today was Day of the Devs, showcasing some gameplay and
Nice.
showing that we're now going to be. We originally announced on the PC and Linux and the Mac, and then we added the Nintendo Switch, which you
Nice.
can wishlist now. Epic. And today we announced PlayStation 5 and Xbox XS.
Nice.
So yeah, go and wishlist those, and we're coming soon.
So I'm really curious. You started out with flat screen in mind. How did you guys come up with, bringing it to the Quest 2 and VR?
Oh wow, that's my fault again.
Well, thank you.
So I don't know how far back you want to go, but I'll try to keep it brief because it's a big story. So I'm a jeweler. That's my trade, and that's what I was doing prior to all of this is jewelry and fashion. And I collaborated with a tattoo artist, a very famous tattoo artist named Paul Booth. Does a lot of dark art kind of stuff, black ink. And
Cool.
while working with him, I was teaching him ZBrush and Rhino and these different 3D packages. He introduced me to. He had just bought the Rift. It had just come out, like literally just came out. And he showed it to me, and we were doing like 3D sculpting inside using Medium, I think it was called. I forgot the name of it, but like basically sculpting in in VR and playing games. We were playing. He's showing me different but basically tech demo games, and that stuck with me. And then I went on to teach in Trenton, New Jersey, underprivileged kids and homeless art and 3D modeling. And they had gotten for me a Rift to show the kids how to use it. Um, so I had one. I had a Rift finally. This is over a couple of years span. This wasn't like a short period of time. We're talking like, I believe I did the jewelry in 2015 or when did the Rift come out? Around that time, 2015,
2016-ish, yeah, right at the
2016,
start.
somewhere around there. And then I got the Rift around 2018. I'm going to say I got it. And then so then what happened was I got divorced, moved back to my parents' house, and got very nostalgic because of being in my old room. Started thinking about video games for whatever reason. I'm not a game developer prior to this, and I didn't really do much in gaming. But for some reason, I started thinking about Commodore 64s. Are you familiar with that, PJ, that computer, Commodore?
I'm right after that. Yep.
Okay,
I've played a couple.
So I went out and I went on Facebook Marketplace and saw one, bought it. I take it home and it's missing the power supply. So of course I go and buy another one. Before you know it, I got like 1,000 games and like every system you can imagine, and it's like it's a rabbit hole. You just start getting into it, and you really you start to really love it. So one day I found King's Quest for sale, like the original one. And I contacted the lady, and I picked it up, and it was like a 250-mile drive to go get it. And I
Wow.
get it, I bring it home, I show it on Facebook, and then a famous collector messages me, "Oh, you got something I really want." So I'm like, "Well, I'm not selling it to you." So I contacted a local vintage federation of computers, and I said, "Hey, Jeff," he was the vice president. And I go, I just found these two really rare games, King's Quest and Adventures in Serenia. And, you guys are always showing the computers. Why don't I make a, presentation about Sierra Online and these two games? And he's like, wow, great idea, Marcus. Oh, by the way, Ken Williams, the programmer, he's going to be also presenting. And I'm like, wow. So from that, I got to meet Ken. And we had to work. And then what happened was basically I got to work with him on the game about a month afterwards. I'm trying to get to the point where you were asking me about how to become VR.
Oh, take your time. It's interesting.
Take my time, okay, because it's quite a story.
Yeah.
So I freak out. I go back to that collector that messaged me, and I go, "Oh my God, I got to go to this presentation, and I want to sound smart about it. I know Sierra, but I don't know everything like LGR or Pushing Up Roses. I don't know it that well." And he goes, "Well, I know Ken Williams." I'm like, "What?" So here we go, like couple of like coincidences happening. You know what I mean? Like destiny kind of things. And I go, well, that's really cool. He's like, do you want me to introduce you? I'm like, please do. So maybe like a few hours later, I get a message. Hey, I'm Ken Williams, and I heard you going to give a presentation. I'm like, whoa, hi, nice to meet you. I really want to do really well on this presentation. Can you give me some insight on why these games exist? Why does King's Quest and Adventure Serenia exist? He goes, well, it just so happens I just wrote a book and I'm about to launch it. Why don't I send you a preview copy? I'm like, what? Sure. Sends me the book. and I read the chapters. And the presentation was like 2 weeks later, right? So I go and I almost missed the presentation, by the way. That's a whole other story, so I'm not gonna get into that. But I almost missed the presentation. So I arrived to give the presentation like literally like unprepared, just maybe read that one chapter that I needed. um, give the presentation, and I'm kind of like, I didn't do so good. I started a little bit, but you know, it was like a one-shot live thing. You know, like you only get one shot. You're in front of 1,000 people. You got to do it right. And so I did the best I could, and people were complimenting. They're like, "Oh, that was a good job, Marcus. You did really well." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." And Ken was like, "Hey, that was better than my presentation." And I'm like, "Wow, stop gassing me," but okay, I'll take it. So I stayed in touch with him, and he periodically respond, and I didn't want to really bother him, but like, hey, blah blah blah. Sometimes he replies, sometimes he wouldn't. And it took me about, so that was like end of October. When was the show of 2020? And so by December, I finished reading the book. And so I messaged him. I go, "Hey Ken, I just finished reading your book." He goes, "What'd you think?" I go, "Wouldn't it be great if you made a comeback like Steve Jobs did at Apple and bring Sierra Online back to the heights that it was and beyond?" And he starts grinning and laughing, and he's like, "I'm working on something." And I go, "Well, I know you don't know this, but it just so happens that I'm a 3D modeler, because when I make my jewelry, I use like ZBrush and Rhino, and I can make assets for you if you need any help." He goes, "Oh, I didn't know you're an artist. I need an artist." He's like, "I want to do this like educational game." I'm like, "All right, that sounds fun." And then, like a day later, right, he gets back to me and he's like, "Hey, Marcus, I was talking to Roberta. You ever hear of Colossal Cave?" And I got to be honest with you, it didn't really stick out to me right away. Like I didn't really, but once he started talking about Xyzzy and started talking about you standing at the end of the road, then it all clicked. And I'm like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Yeah, Roberta thinks that we should probably do that game instead." I'm like, "Well, that's cool." All right, he goes, "But you got to stay quiet. Don't tell anybody you're working with us. Don't tell anybody you're working with me." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." He goes, "I may pull the rug on it. I'm not really sure if this is going to work out, or I might do it under a pseudonym." So, you got to imagine, here I am working with Ken and Roberta Williams, and I can't say a darn thing. So
Yeah,
I
that's
start like, yeah, it was crazy. So I started to like, unfollow everybody, get out of groups, because I knew I'm going to
yep.
spill the beans somewhere. I was bugging out. So, and I knew I had to like be full on 24 hours, 7 days a week. I said, "There's no way I'm letting this, if the ball is in your hand, don't drop it." Right. So
Yeah.
whatever I had to do, whatever he asked me, if I didn't know, and by the way, never made a game of my life. Right, never made these assets like this before. So here I am having to learn how to optimize, make terrain, make this, make that, unwrap, UV unwrap a character. I mean, all these stuff that I never had to do before. And I'm learning it like at a very high rate of speed, because it's like I'm with the two of the top people in gaming history, right? Like unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's my first opportunity, like my first job in gaming here, work with the king and queen of adventure games. And okay. So for a while we're working, right, and we're building out this prototype, and it's a 3D, flat screen game. And one day he goes to me, he goes, "Hey Marcus, do you think that kids today are going to play this game?" And I go, "You will get some kids that will play this game, that's for sure. You definitely got the Sierra Online fans. We're gonna have all them wanting to play the game." But I said, if this game was made today, and if Sierra was here today making this game, Sierra Online was here today making this game 100% would be in VR. And it was like a light bulb went off in his head, ding. And he's like, "Wow, you're right. That's it, like, I don't know if he said that exact words, maybe I'm ad-libbing, but next thing you know, he's asking me to find a programmer to help us." And and then we finished the prototype. So he goes, "Go ahead and announce to everybody you're working with me." So I go on Twitter and I'm like, so this is 6 months later, after he asked me those questions, blah blah blah. He's like, I go, hey, everybody, guess what I'm doing? I'm working with Ken and Roberta Williams from Sierra Line making a new game. I mean, take a guess the reaction I got.
I can about imagine.
Give me one guess. What kind of reaction do you think I got?
I would assume, fans aside, like companies, like, hey, what are you making it on? What's it for? You know, type of thing. And then
How
fans are
about you're
just,
full of crap? You're lying. Who the heck are you? You're this jeweler. You never made a game in your life. Ken and Roberta are on a yacht, living their life. They said they're never making a game. No, you're full of it.
nice.
And somebody contacted Ken, and then he was like, "No, it's true. Marcus is telling the truth. He's working with me." And they all came back like, "Ooh, we're so sorry." And I'm like, "All right, that's all right."
How long from when they're like, you're full of crap, to like, oh, we apologize? How long was that window?
It's like maybe an hour, 2 hours.
Oh, I was gonna say, if that was like a week, I mean, how long a week would that have been? How long was that
No,
hour?
it went pretty quick. It was pretty fast. It was pretty fast. But you know, the news hit pretty big actually. Like, you know, I think PC Gamer and all the majors started talking about it, and all of a sudden I'm like getting flooded with messages on my LinkedIn and on my Facebook, and one guy in particular was like, "Hey, remember me? I'm Brian Denola. I'm the guy that taught you 3D modeling back in 2003." And I'm like, "Well, of course I remember you, Brian. How you doing?" He goes, "I just left Autodesk and I'm working at Unity." I go, "You
Hmm.
working at Unity?" I was like, "We're using Unity as an engine to develop the game." I go, "Do me a favor. I know you just got this job like a week ago, but go to your boss right now and tell him you know the guy working with Ken and Roberta Williams and making a new game." So he did that. And before you know it, we're in like a Zoom meeting, right? The first Zoom meeting, we literally had like 12 people from Unity on that call.
Wow.
And, you know, they gave us like full support. And that's when Roberta really started to get pulled in. You know, like during that whole time I'm working with Ken, it was really just Ken and I. And every once in a while, Roberta would stick her, you know, head in and like, say, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" and give a little bit of comments. And I'll never forget one time Ken was like, "Listen, Roberta, you're either all in or you're not." I'll never forget that moment. That was pretty funny. You know, she's like, "Oh, all right, well, you just keep working on it," you know. So for a while, she really didn't want to do it, but like I knew, like, just kept on sending her emails and like asking her opinion. I was like, "There's no way she's not going to want to do this. Like, I can't imagine." I just believed in my heart. Like, I just felt like that it was, and I also knew that eventually there will be a full team. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to handle making all the character art, making all the environment, make all the assets, you know, do everything by myself. Like, I was just like, it's not going to
Yeah.
happen. And all my predictions came true. And here we are with you know, if you count everybody, we've got like close to 40 people working on this game.
Wow.
um you know, we start off just Ken and I is now 40 people. If you count Unity, the people helping us in Unity, we're up to like 60 people working on the game.
Nice.
um yeah, and it's a really amazing VR immersiveness. And you know, a lot of people think it's a VR only game, but it's really not. It's like, you know, the VR is kind of our hook to get you in, like, oh, you know, get the kids in to play the game. But believe it or not, a lot of the people loved the PC version of the game a lot too. Like, we had a long line at PAX West. We had people playing it on the Switch, and each version of the game feels totally different, even though it's the same graphics, same game. But to play the game on PC versus the Switch versus in VR, it's like three different experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that, because I mean, it's just different inputs and just the feel of it. Even like you said, it's the same game, but uh,
Feels
man, that's
totally
that's
different in VR.
that's one of the craziest stories I've heard. Um, Going from, like you said, jewelry to now we're working on Colossal Cave with a big team. Like, that's
There's a
wow.
lot of onion. There's a lot of things to peel away. I can keep going and going and going. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, I've told people, some of these interviewers, the story, and the guy goes, Marcus, that's unbelievable. I'm like, no, it's true. He goes, no, you don't understand. This is like one of the most incredible stories I've ever heard. I'm
Yeah.
like, come on, man, I'm telling the truth. He's like,
I mean,
it's like I can't believe it.
you already had me in, no one knows this yet because at the start you're like, yeah, I'm in a car right now stealing Starbucks Wi-Fi talking to you.
Yeah, I'm
I'm like,
literally doing that right now.
it can't get any crazier than that. And there you went. So
In wait, I'm in Oakhurst, California, next to the Sierra Online, the old building, the red building that they had, and the print shop the very first office they ever had. I'm like literally right in the middle at a Starbucks, like talking to you, wearing a mohawk in a red outfit with a pig nose on. Not even
yeah,
joking.
like you said, there's an onion.
There's a
Lot of
big
layers.
onion here. Lots of layers, lots and lots.
That's awesome. And I only know that because you like, a lot of people hit something and you're like, oh, the car window. And I'm like, car window?
Yeah, yeah, it's a car window. Right? It's a car window. That's right.
But yeah, that is insane. That is, like you said, there's some fate in there mixed in with all that coincidence and timing.
It has to be destiny.
Yeah.
It's the only way to explain it. Like everything, when any one thing that didn't happen, I wouldn't be here right now. The game wouldn't. Maybe the game would be here. Like I don't want to say it wouldn't be here because I do believe they would have done it without me anyway. I think that would have happened, but I just happened to be at the right time, the right place with the right set of skills. I'm also a very good talker. I'm a very good artist, and I'm also a very good businessman. That's something that you're all going to find out soon. Like what a really good business development guy I am, and to combine all those three things is like I think pretty rare.
Yeah. So going forward with the game Colossal Cave, like, so you already said it's the same on every platform. So what style of game is it, and what can players expect from it?
Same in the PC, PS5, and the Xbox version will have enhanced graphics because obviously, as you know, like I'm looking at your table over here, it's blurry. Why is it so blurry? Blurry because it has to be very low polygon, right, and very
Mhm.
low resolution in order to function in Quest because we're basically running on mobile processors here, right? It's a
Yep.
Snapdragon processor. So, we did things a little backwards in all honesty. Like we built things, usually you build a game high res first, high level first, and then you port to a lower version. We did it the other way around. Um, whether that was the right way to go or not, I guess it is in the way that we're here we are with a game that works on a Quest, works
Yep.
on a Switch, and now we have the high res version getting worked on, and we'll have it on PS5 and Xbox and PC. So yeah, I don't know. I forgot your question.
I was curious, what can players expect? Like, what kind of game is it? Is it just like a dialogue heavy adventure game, or what are the mechanics? And
It's the original 50-year-old game, text adventure, brought into VR and 3D. So it has almost all the original dialogue. And it's not really a dialogue. There's no like, it's not like Monkey Island where you have LeChuck and you have like, Treepwood talking to each other, Guybrush, and you have these dialogue trees. None of that. It is the classic puzzle solving. But we have one of these really awesome narrators that, like, as you're looking around and you're looking at things, it's giving you this story. And I'll never forget, like, when I'm working with Roberta in the very beginning, I took a lot of inspiration from Skyrim and from Oblivion and from all the games that I played. And those games had music playing constantly, right? Like when you're walking through
Mhm.
the forest, you got music, blah blah. So I was going that same direction. And she's like, no, 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 Marcus. Do they really still do that? I go, yeah, it's like pretty common. She goes, I don't want to do that. I said, oh, okay. She goes, I just want to do like immersive sound effects. Like, you really feel like you're in the forest. I said, oh, okay. And at I was a little bit like, not sure about it. And then once we did it, I'm like, whoa, she's right. This is so much better. Another thing she did was she created a one mouse. This game is playable with one hand. You don't
Nice.
need you don't need to do the WSD. You literally just play with a mouse with the two buttons in the middle mouse button. And I was like, well, that's weird. Like, why are you changing that? Why don't you just do the WSD? And she's, no, Marcus, I really want it to be like, one mouse control where you can just sit back and relax and play the game in a relaxed manner. And at first I was like, I hated it. I was like, oh, this is terrible. But then as she was correcting it, and this is what the one thing I really learned about her was, as she was developing it or inventing it, she was literally inventing it. I started to love it. I'm like, oh, no, this is the way. I don't even go back to playing it at WSD. I just play with the one mouse because, like she said, it's relaxed and you just play it one-handed. So that's another brilliant thing that I saw her do, and her graphical direction, her storytelling. This has, like I said, the original text, but it has her touches in it, her art direction, her explanation, filling in the gaps of things where, this 5-year-old game again didn't really there was nothing before it, right? So it is like really amazing that it's such a great game at such an early stage of game development back in 1975. And she just kind of filled in some of the blanks or some of the things to add her flavor to it, and created this really interesting narrative of the story that doesn't really, doesn't exist in the game, but makes sense when you play. You're like, oh, okay, what she was doing here. So though to spend 5 hours talking to her about design on a regular basis per day, it's just an awesome experience.
I bet. That sounds pretty neat. And like you said, it's all the original text, and you guys are putting it to 3D graphics and all that. There's
By the
got
way,
to be some.
all these graphics don't exist anymore. It's totally different already. Like, we have
Nice.
so many people working on it now. Like, these are outdated graphics already. So like whatever you're seeing, like we use this thing called Plastic by Unity. It's kind of like a GitHub. It's kind of our version control.
Yep.
And you would see, like, again, we have like almost 40 people working, so you just see this timeline. Like 1 minute, like I'm like at number 300, and then they're like 1,000. They move so fast, like uploading characters and changing art and adding functionality and just sound effects and just so like this is already outdated. A lot of this stuff we changed, and I think the players are going to really. I have a really good feeling that, and the reason why I say it is because I'm the guy that's been going to every single show. So I was at GDC, I was at PAX East, I was at PAX West, I was at Gamescom in Germany, and I went into the retro game com in Syracuse. And that one in
Nice.
particular was really cool because we had a line of like, kids like 8 to 13. And this is the target demographic that Ken and Roberta really love to cater to. 8 to 13, like these young kids, and they loved the game. They were like,
That's awesome.
That was really amazing to see how much they were really enjoying playing it, especially in the VR. The VR is I nailed it with that. That was like the hook that really gets the kids' hearts, right? And hardly any of them get nauseous. Like all the old fogies are like, I'm like, it's because you're too old. Give it to the young kids. They love that crap. They go in there like, woo, like they're having fun. So that was a really good sign. But also, like when we were at PAX West, the PC line was really long. People loving the PC version. So that gives me a lot of confidence that this game is going to do really well.
That's I'm glad to hear that, because yeah, like you mentioned, like no one knew that it was coming to all these platforms, it seemed, and I was one of them. I just thought it was coming to Quest and VR, and I was super excited because you know, the immersive storytelling, and you know, like you said, she's like, don't put constant music in there and all that, because that'll, like in VR, that would, you know, mess with the immersion and stuff. So I'm so pumped to see how this goes in VR.
You're gonna love it. I make sure that you're gonna be able to play test it soon and
Oh,
have a great
that's
time.
sweet.
You're gonna really love it. I don't know, like in terms of quest games, this is probably one of the biggest quest games out there right now. It's that big. We put the colossal into the cave. You know, it's big.
That's good to hear, because that's not the norm right now, unfortunately, for VR titles. So I'm glad to hear that, because
And we're no mercy. This game is not easy. We are not holding hands. We're not making any kind of like little markers go this way
oh my
or,
God, you
you know,
are checking every box that just is making me more excited, because I'm old school. I love, you know, I have to figure it out. I'm just not being like if Wookie was here, he'd say like how GTA gives you the pinpoint, like the
we're not doing
missing the
any of
word,
that.
but
No
yeah,
mercy,
that's
full
awesome.
immersion, music. It's huge game. I remember when Ken's like, "Oh, we're gonna make this little game. It's called Colossal Cave." He's like, "It's a small game. Shouldn't take too long. You know, we should be done in 6 months." It's 2 years later, and I'll never forget telling him, like, "Ken, you know, when was the last time you played this game?" Because I was playing the text adventure. He's like, "Well, I don't really. I didn't really play the game. It was Roberta that played." I go, "Ken, this game is huge. I just want you to know that this game is humongous." I was like, "It's not really a small game."
You don't have to answer, but is there like do you know like an average playtime, what that might be, or not really? Is
We
it kind
just
of,
had the conversation about it. So we have speedrunners,
yeah,
and the speedrunners, knowing all the puzzles and knowing everything, can finish the game in 3 hours. Speedrunning, top
yep,
speed, running through it. But if you don't know the puzzles and you never played this game before, this game is going to take you minimum 10 to 20 hours.
that's awesome. Yeah, and again, to your point where you're like, these graphics are outdated, like the video I'm watching right now looks really good, so I'm even more excited to hear that. Like,
I mean, when you
because like
walk
you
into
said,
that
you built,
dragon statue, when you
yeah,
walk into that dragon statue and you look up in VR, you're just like, oh man, you really feel like you're in this magical cave. Like it just feels so enormous. It starts off like very realistic and like you know, like the beginning part's kind of like a cobble crawl and like because we're following the game like exactly how it, but once you go down that misty staircase, it's like you went down Alice's rabbit hole into like this fantasy world where it just really starts to open up and becomes really fantastical.
that's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that, Ken. You know, you just said, hey, you know what would be good? VR. And he's like, yeah. Instead of like, no, no way. Like, what the hell is VR? No thanks, type of thing. Like, because, you
No,
know,
he
there's a
showed me a
lot of,
photograph from 1996 of him wearing a VR headset in 1996. And in
nice.
there, he's like asking, like, you know, is Sierra going to work on VR games in the future? And he's like, you know, maybe one day, but not right now because it's not ready. Well, clearly it's ready now, and here we are. And I mean, if Sierra was here today, this is the kind of game they would make. I mean, and another thing is like, so we have like Melissa Brown from Meta, Ted, you know, we have all these different really high level people. They're really pushing for us to make it super interactive, like where you pick up the bottle with your hand and you hold it and you do this. And Roberta was
Nice.
very adamant of it not being that. She says,
Oh,
I want it to be a point and click adventure inside VR. And that's what we did. And, you know, at first I was against it too. Like, I'm like, hold the bird cage. I want to do this. And in reality, the point and click was actually really fun, and for the kids too. The kids, it made it easier for the kids too, and they really liked the point and click action of it. And that part was really shocking to me that that kind of interface in VR, which I don't think anybody's ever really done, um, is working so well and is really well received.
yeah, I'm be interested to check that out, because my initial instinct, like, that doesn't work in VR. That's not what VR is for. But I'm glad to hear otherwise. And like, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, no, me too. Like I was like, no, you got to hold the bottle and you got to be able to like, fight the dwarves with the axe, and they're like, no, you're going to make this like a classic point and click adventure. We even have the old school looking Sierra icons in the
Nice.
VR and yeah. And I really loved how the kids loved it. That was really cool because you could play it like relax. You see, like when you do it, when you're having
Yeah.
like to pick it up with your hands and this and that, it becomes like, you really got to get into it, right? But if it's point and click, you can just like kind of sit here and point and click and just kind of, play the game like this.
Yeah.
And it also helps with nausea because she created a locomotion that we call it what did she call it? There's the classic locomotion, which is where you use the regular two joysticks, and then the comfort. We call it the comfort locomotion. I wanted to call it the Roberta locomotion, but she said that's a little too egotistical. And no, Marcus, I said okay. And the way it works is kind of like your whole arm. So like you pull the trigger. It's kind of like a tank control. You pull the trigger to move forward, and then you move your arm left and right, and that's your steering. You still have your snap turns and and then the other button on the side, that side grip button, that one will make you go backwards. So and it makes it very smooth because we optimize so hard. We're running at over 72 frames, so it's like buttery smooth. So there's
Nice.
very little nausea feeling when you're playing the game. And then the other hand is used to control the point and click aspect of it and your inventory and things like that.
Nice. That sounds really inventive. That's cool.
Yeah, no, they've invented already three different things, right? The one-handed mouse control, the new locomotion. There was something else, but yeah, they're like very inventive people. They are not followers. They are 100% leaders.
That's yeah, it's really interesting for, if I'm this is just my point of view, but like, they've kind of been out of the game, no pun intended, and just coming back in and, we're gonna do this because that's what we think is right and that's what we think will work. And turns out, every time so far from what you said it's been true. And it, without even trying it to see what it's like and then saying, maybe this, but they're just like, nope, it's this, and it works out. Like, that's insane.
Well, you got to remember, they weren't like, okay, yeah, they were out of the business for 27 years, but they were at the top. Like
Yeah.
they were. There's a picture of there was a picture that I just recently saw of like Ken Williams doing shots with Steve Wozniak, like at his house, like partying.
Yeah.
They've had like the hung out with Steve Jobs, like sat down and did business deals with Bill Gates. Jeff Bezos, I think, went to Ken to borrow some money to start Amazon. They did business deals with AT&T. They almost were the internet before the internet with TSN, the Sierra Network, or
Yeah.
INN. They were so ahead. They were the ones that put the Roland MP32 and the sound cards and everything to push things and the tech forward. He was wearing VR glasses in 96 already. They are so far. But the thing that I believe, and this is the biggest lesson I learned from all of this, is the essence of a video game has not changed. The essence of what makes a game fun or the story or an adventure game has not changed since the 1980s, or even you could say from 1975. Or
Yeah.
what's funny? I spoke to Miss Bushnell, whose dad, Norman Bushnell, I guess his name is, started Atari. He was
Hmm.
the founder of Atari, and she was the tester for the Pong. And she was
Wow.
telling me that, her father would say the same thing, that the basics of a game from all the way back then is not really much different. What makes a game fun?
Yeah.
So they have that stuff. They have that magic. I call, Ken and Roberta like magical, like they're like wizards and warlocks. They just know what they're doing when it comes to this stuff.
That's really cool. And I'm glad to hear that because, and these days with newer games and systems and, lighting and all that, like, I think the focus falls away from gameplay and what actually is core gameplay and what makes games work. I think we've gotten away from all that. So I'm glad to like see them come back and be like, hey, it's still this, it's still how, you know, this is what works and what's important. That's really neat.
And going to the different shows and seeing the kids' reactions and the players' reactions. Sure, we get a couple of haters, or I wouldn't say haters, but more like critic. The hardest criticism we get is like, "Oh, those graphics look like PS2, or it looks like a game from 2016, or you know what I mean, like a little bit of a ding on the graphics." But it's like, hello, we're making it for Quest 2, is
Yeah.
like mobile processor. This is the best, this is some of the finest graphics you'll see on a Quest. So I challenge you to do better. I literally
Yeah.
challenged them because I was getting nasty messages. Like one lady was like, "You are representing Ken and Roberta Williams, and how dare you make such terrible graphics?" I'm like, "Oh my God, what are you talking about?" First of all, it's not just me, okay? It's like we have a
Yeah.
team of graphic artists here, and I'm like, if you could do better, let me see your portfolio. That was literally my response.
Yeah.
Radio silence after that.
And that comes from, that sounds like someone who hasn't been in VR, where like you mentioned, our booth here and stuff, it's low res, low poly. Once you're in here though, it feels like you're in a room and a chair talking, together.
Oh, yeah.
And your brain fills in the rest and it's fine. So it's I found that's people who don't know what VR is or have tried it, or it's like the very far end enthusiasts, like all I can play is Half-Life 2 and nothing else because it ruined it for me. It's like, get out of here. Like,
But I'll tell you this. I've learned how to make this table much sharper looking, higher res looking, and fake it.
yep.
We can
And,
talk offline about it, and I'll teach you how to do it.
so Cyril from Garage Collective Games, this is from his latest game, Shock Troops. We have kind of butchered this, and he when he's not busy, he's like, because we're retooling, like I said, we're actually going to go to plastic and use that. He's like, we're going to take all that, make it look like it should, like the game, and get you right lighting. So he's going to work his magic and make it look better. We kind of butchered it a little bit, so and it was
No,
a
don't worry.
time
I'm
crunch
not
thing.
dissing. I'm just saying that.
I know.
What the point I'm trying to make is somebody that came from jewelry, that never made a game in his life, is now able to make this better for you if you wanted it. Like I know exactly what to do here, and that's the amazing thing about working with Ken and Roberta Williams. Was they literally threw me in the ocean and said, "You better
Yeah.
learn how to swim." And here I am.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy it worked out, and it worked out the way it did, because like you're saying how they're magical, but the whole thing seems like it's magic. And
It's
like,
an
if you would have
it's an adventure. It's a
yeah,
magical adventure. I feel like I'm literally living out an adventure right now, and it's feeling really good. And I have a good feeling about this game. And then the other thing is, like, I feel like this game is not going to be the only one they make.
that's really exciting on its own. Pumped.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people
Um,
are. I literally get thank you. Like I go into meetings and people like literally thank me for helping pulling them out of retirement. I can't believe how many times I've heard that. Or like, when Ken comes into the meeting, like I'll be in like an executive's office out of a major company in gaming, and they're like, Ken, if it wasn't for you and Sierra, I wouldn't be here today because you were the inspiration of why I wanted to make games. I can't even tell you how many times I've heard that. It was so many times that I've heard that from
awesome.
high level people in the industry.
Hmm.
You know,
That's that.
I
That's got to
I
be
do
the
have one.
coolest feeling for someone to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I keep saying I want to tell one joke because, you know, um, I tell people that there was nothing special about me really. I said that I would just go to these different meetings and use the password Ken sent me, and it would work every time. It just would work every time. I would end up in the executive's office and working with top people. And it's like, that password, I don't know if you know where it comes from. It's a reference to Leisure Suit Larry. And
Mm,
in the game, the puzzle was Ken sent me. And you would
nice.
go and you go into the brothel. But it gets me into executives' offices and it works. It's pretty funny.
That's awesome. So with Colossal Cave, do you guys have I don't think you have a release date or even announced it, but if do you have like a window or like an estimated time,
This
or
year,
are you just not
this
this year?
year,
Okay. That's
this
awesome.
year. No, this year. I know it's not that much time left, so this year. That's all I'm gonna
And
say.
is it the same for all platforms, or is it going to come to certain things and then others, or
That's not in our control.
sure. Okay.
That's not in our control. Have to go through certifications. We've done things like we've pulled in third-party companies to check our TRCs and, make sure we cross our T's and dot our I's. But, the way these things work is that the rules are constantly changing, and, even these third-party companies don't know exactly what Sony wants or what Xbox wants, or, so generally nobody passes on the first pass. We may be the first that will. So let's see what happens.
Have you heard any comments from Ken? You know, making games back then versus now, like
Oh yeah.
any comments from him?
I mean, the technology is, like Unity is an amazing engine to work in. But if you really think about it, he created the first game engine, right? I think it was called SCI or AGI, or, when he made Mystery House. That's why they were able to pump out so many games so fast, because he made the tools himself that made the
Yeah.
games. So he was one of the first, if not the first, to create a game toolkit. And Unity is a great representation of what Sierra or AGI or SCI or whatever the latest version was would have became, Unreal Engine or Unity. And they I'm glad I'm making a game now as opposed to back then, because I got to tell you honestly, I feel like it's so much easier now to make a game. Um, yeah, it's like Unity makes making video games super easy.
I've
And that's
heard
coming
that.
from not just from me, that's coming from Ken. Ken says the same thing. And then I also say, like, the basic thing of the game is the same from back then that it is today. The essence of it, he'll say the same thing. He just uses the same spreadsheets that he used to use to, lay out the game design, and, a lot of the stuff is the same, but, mostly what's changed is the tech and the speed of things, and, some of the workflows. Like, he was like, make me a dwarf. I need it by tomorrow. And I'm like, Ken, you really want me to model a dwarf, then retopologize it, then texture it, and like all of this stuff, like in a day? Like, I don't think you realize how long it takes. It takes a little longer than that. So maybe stuff like that he doesn't really know, but now he knows. Now he knows what takes a while and
He's
what
up to
doesn't.
speed now, right?
Yeah. No, they learn fast. They learn quick. They really do.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so excited. I can't even tell you. I hope, I'm so glad, like you said, just seeing the young generation take to it. Like that's really inspiring and heartwarming actually for me, because that's the tough crowd. Like, with it just proves the point that what worked back then is what's important and what works now, because they latched on to it. So as an older gamer, I'll be comfortable with it, and just being able to, if I'm going to assume it has like that old Sierra-ish feeling, and you'll kind of feel at home maybe a little bit if you've played some of those games, and to check that out in VR, like that's got me excited.
It's 100% a Sierra game.
It's awesome.
It is. I mean, Ken and Roberta are Sierra Online. They're the heart and soul of that entire company. And whatever magic, that was created after that with Jane Jensen and with Al Lowe, and they all had to take inspiration from Colossal Cave and from Ken and Roberta Williams, and the systems that were in place, and the way that they operate and do things. And you may not agree with them at all times, and they're not always 100% right, but 99% of the times they're correct, and they're on the right track, and they lead you to the right path. And it's it's awesome. So yeah, like you were saying, um, it's as close to a Sierra game as you're going to get today. It's as close to a King's Quest. If you wanted a King's Quest 9, this is as close as you're going to get to it right now.
That's, that's awesome. So I'm almost speechless between your story and hearing, the background of it. This year can't end fast enough to get this.
It's coming soon. That's all I'm going to say. Coming
Yep.
soon. Coming soon.
But yeah,
I
really
feel very
appreciate
confident.
you coming and sharing. Like, you're a great storyteller. You had a great story to tell. And again, you're sitting in a car with a mohawk and a pig nose for some reason.
Yep.
Like,
No, because that's the two guys from Andromeda. My buddy Cade's right next to me. He was my,
oh, I got you.
yeah. We're playing these two characters. Like I'll tell you real quick what we're doing. So we're the two guys from Andromeda, and we're coming to pitch a new game to Ken Williams. But we have they're not here anymore. So we go to all the offices and we're like frustrated that the doors are locked, and we're trying to figure out. So we're going from office to office trying to find Ken Williams. And people are like looking at us, who the hell are you guys? Why are you wearing these outfits? And we're like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just don't call the cops. We're innocent. One guy's literally like, you're trespassing. Right, Kate? Isn't that what he says? He's like, you're trespassing. It was pretty funny.
That's crazy. So you have a friend in the car with you next to you, just kind of hanging out while you're talking here.
Yep, that's right. He's my partner in crime today, making this skit.
That's awesome. Well, is there anything we didn't get to that you wanted to talk about before we call it an hour? I don't want to keep you in your car too long.
Yeah, I think we're good. I mean, wishlist the game at on PlayStation 5, at Xbox XS, on Switch, at Epic Games, or go to our website colossalcave3d.com. We have a backstage pass that you sign up for, and we're putting like exclusive content on there for you to go onto our Discord. Ken and Roberta are very responsive right now. They're on a media tour. They're going to answer questions. They're going to talk to you. If you ever wanted to hear from them and talk with them, this is the chance you have. I didn't even know how far away they are from the gaming world. Until I met them. Like, I didn't realize how detached they were from. Like, I guess it's ignorance is bliss in a way. I had no idea. I really didn't. So here's your chance. Do it. And we're looking forward to you guys playing our game.
Yeah. So anyone watching or listening, you know the drill. All those links will be in the show notes on both versions. We'll get them out there so you can get to them easier and jump in, join in the Discord.
Follow me on Twitter, Dr. Guillotine TV. Follow me on Twitter. I definitely respond, and I'll be on different shows. We're going to be doing all the different events. We'll definitely have a launch party. So, just give me a follow.
That's awesome. Thanks again, man. It has been a joy and a blast to talk to you and have you on and hear your story and what's going on with the game and that it's coming soon. And I'm pumped.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for watching, listening, and hanging out. Catch you next time. Till then, it's been talking about Colossal Cave, and wishlist it. Check out the links.